On Palm Sunday, Christians all over the world celebrate Jesus' entry into Jerusalem, a day that signifies the point of no return. But why did Jesus ride on a donkey? What are the palm leaves about? Why did Jesus say that the stones would cry out if the people were silent? And how come the crowd greeted him with Hosanna, even if just a few days later they would demand, crucify him? We will look into all of this. Jesus' whole life, no Jesus coming to earth at all, were all about the following week in which he would be arrested, humiliated, tortured, and most importantly, killed. Despite of what was going to happen, Jesus entered the holy city triumphantly, and for very good reasons, as I will show. Let's start at the beginning of this day. When Jesus and his disciples were traveling over the Mount of Olives, Jesus sends two of them to the village of Bethphage to bring him an unbroken colt of a donkey. At least two things are astonishing here. One, Jesus knew that they would find a colt that no one had ever ridden, which, sure enough, they do. And number two, when they tell the owner the Lord needs it, as Jesus had asked them to say, the owner lets them take the colt without payment or protest. So the disciples bring the colt to Jesus, throw their cloaks on the colt, and put Jesus on it. And even though it was the first time someone has sat on his back, we do not learn that the donkey caused the slightest bit of trouble. Everything moves forward according to God's plan. Nothing can stop redemptive history that culminates on the cross. Let's continue with the story. Gospel writer Matthew records that when Jesus ascended toward Jerusalem, a very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. As we can see, they were giving Jesus a royal treatment, similar to the honor that was given to King Jehu at his coronation, as we learn in 2 Kings 9:13. And I'd like to mention another point. Jesus must have smelled wonderfully that day. Shortly before, at a dinner, he was anointed by a woman with an oil so expensive that she was criticized for being so wasteful. But Jesus said in Matthew 26, "In pouring this ointment on my body, she has done it to prepare me for burial." Wow! Jesus knew exactly what was going to happen in Jerusalem and was still ready to enter the city that day. Now, who was anointed for burials with oil in ancient history? Kings, of course, yet another reference to His Majesty. About 450 to 500 years before, the prophet Zechariah had prophesied that Jerusalem would be welcoming her king. "Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly, riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." The Jerusalem Jews knew that prophecy very well and must have recognized what was happening. But where does the name Palm Sunday come from? Gospel writer John gives us an extra detail. They took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting. What were they shouting? Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel. The Jewish crowd was quoting from Psalm 118 that contains a well-acknowledged prophecy of the coming Messiah, saying, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." So the people knew that Jesus was not only a king, but he was also the Messiah, the Christ that they had waited for. No surprise that some of the religious leaders were not happy at all and demanded from Jesus, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." But Jesus answered, I tell you, if these were silent, the very stones would cry out. Wow. Jesus is making a reference to Habakkuk 2:11, which says, for the stone will cry out from the wall and the beam from the woodwork respond. Jesus is implying here that all of creation acknowledges who he is and what is happening here, even better than the human beings at the scene. The inanimate nature knows not only that he is a king and a Messiah, but also that he is God. All over the Bible, there are references about nature praising God, like the forest singing for joy in Psalm 96:12, or trees of the field clapping their hands in Isaiah 55:12. After all, Jesus created all of nature. Only humans are often in the dark. Interestingly, in the book of Revelation, chapter 7, we also learn about palm-bearing saints shouting, salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. The Lamb points to the humility in which Jesus was ready to ride into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday into his death. Palm Sunday is the start of Passion Week, that some also call Holy Week. It marks the end of Jesus' journey as a human being on this planet, the turning point, the beginning of the end of Jesus' earthly ministry that was always meant to culminate in Golgotha, his death on the cross. And that is where he is headed. And when approaching Jerusalem, Jesus wept over it and said, if you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes. The days will come upon you when your enemies will not leave one stone on another, because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you. But wait, had they not just welcomed him as a king? Jesus knew that just a few days later, the same Jerusalem crowd, stirred up by the religious leaders, would shout, crucify him. Why would they do that? Even those who were shouting Hosanna in the highest heaven when he entered Jerusalem, who realized that he was the Messiah, the King, did not understand that the Messiah had not come to free them from Roman occupancy, but he had come to suffer and die a horrible death for them. But not only for them, also for us today. We are all sinners, deserving death and condemnation, in need of salvation. Jesus knew his death was the only way. The place was right, the time had come, it had to be done, and only he, the sin-free Son of Man, could do it. That is why he did not hesitate to ride on his donkey into the city of his cruel death. And all I can say today is, thank you, Jesus, for entering Jerusalem most triumphantly as a king, most humbly on a donkey, most lovingly prepared to be nailed on a cross and die for us. And knowing that he was resurrected 3 days later, we can say with a deeper understanding of who he is, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven.